The Rebel Capitalist Show.
One of the reasons I thought gold might not be going up as quickly as we would have assumed with the CPI being at 8-9% is just in my personal portfolio. I always buy gold as just physical gold is just an insurance policy. So I don't really care what the price is, but more so looking at when a good time would be to buy the gold miners, which I consider more of a speculative asset. I didn't pull the trigger. I haven't even pulled the trigger lately when they've gotten pretty cheap. And my rationale is because of the inversion of the yield curve. So I saw the curve invert 4 or 5 months ago. And now, as we speak, the 2s and 10s are inverted by probably close to 50 basis points. Yeah. And the curve is inverted all the way to the 6 month. You know, the 6 month is higher yield than the 10-year, at least it was last week. So as you know, this is the bond market just screaming recession, or maybe worse, maybe economic crisis. And so then I go back and remember the GFC right around Lehman. And then I remember March of 2020, and gold takes a huge hit in that kind of black swan type crisis situation because the big money managers have to sell whatever's liquid on their balance sheet. And that's always gold. That's one of the reasons it's great. But that presents a huge buying opportunity when you have this big drop down quickly. And then usually the quote unquote solutions the central planners come out with are very bullish for gold, although they're very bearish for the real economy, you know, long term. So from my portfolio, that's kind of what I was waiting for. I'm like, I'm going to go hold off on the gold miners because the yield curve is telling me we got something really, really bad happen, a lot worse than we see right now. And that could mean the gold miners come down even further to where there's even a better buying opportunity. And so I was kind of waiting for that. So I guess my question is, do you think the market was potentially doing the same thing, which has suppressed the gold price to the degree to which has surprised a lot of the gold bugs?
Well, I think a lot of things surprise the gold bugs. Typically, when the Fed is in an interest rate hiking cycle, gold performs well. I mean, that's just been historical record. There's a lot of theories about why that happens, but who knows? But it has always happened. This time, we started a trend upward for about a couple of weeks before the Fed's first rate hike. Then Russia invaded Ukraine. The gold price shot up on a geopolitical issue, which means it's going to go right back down, and it did. And when it started going back down, that became the new theme or consensus, and the traders jumped on top of that. That, I think, put some noise into the signal that we should have gotten that would have been bullish for gold in that instance. What you're talking about with the yield curve, talking about recession and perhaps a buying opportunity, you're looking at a liquidity vacuum kind of an event like we saw in March 2020, like we saw in 2008.
Or in the UK,
and when that happens, everything goes down. I mean, you know, they take the piano player out of the house of ill repute along with everybody else. And gold goes down because it's the piggy bank that can be broken. I would counter that in this instance with a couple of observations. One being that the miners in particular are so blown out right now that you're at a really good level, and you may not be able to pick a better level. And as we saw, you know, over the last couple of days, if you don't time it right and you try to jump on it when they start moving, you might lose 5 or 10% of potential gains. They may not be able to go a whole lot lower because nobody owns them right now. I mean, very few people own them right now. Gold itself is not widely held. I mean, you have the ETFs that could be sold out, and that would create some pressure. But there have been withdrawals for some time in the big gold ETFs. So there's not a lot of gold widely held. And in fact, one of the things we've seen is there are a lot of shorts in that market that are really up against the wall. They were over the last couple of days as we speak. We had some short covering rallies. So, you know, my view is when something's a really, really good deal, maybe you should just kind of accumulate and not try to pick the absolute bottom, because you may never get that, may never be that fortunate.
Yeah, great point. So now let's discuss this idea that some have on Twitter that gold just hasn't been doing its job. is no longer a store of value, but it's a very dollar-centric view. So if we look at gold throughout history, and I don't know this, but I'm assuming you do, has there been times when gold just hasn't really performed in a specific currency, but overall it does, and then you wait 10 years and then it catches up? That's always been my view, that the job of gold isn't to just stay in lockstep with the US CPI every single day. It's just to make sure that it maintains its purchasing power, not necessarily over days or weeks or months or even years, but really in decades. So what are your views there, Brien?
Yeah, a few things. Number one, we talk about gold as a 4,000-year-old asset, but it was money for 4,000 years. It's only been an investable asset class since 1971. So it's actually, only crypto is younger than gold as an investable asset out there. So we don't have a big history to see how it reacts to changes in the CPI, because it used to be money back then when the currency was actually locked to gold. And the people who say that gold is not an inflation hedge are absolutely right. It isn't. It doesn't move in lockstep, tick by tick with the CPI or the inflation rate. It just kind of buggers along and doesn't do much until people really start to freak out about the future purchasing power of their currency. I call it a freak out hedge. So when people really get worried about what's going to happen to their currency, typically the dollar, then they rush to gold, and it makes up for lost time, and it typically overshoots equilibrium on the upside.
Right.
And so you look at gold to preserve wealth as insurance, but when you look at gold as an investment, when you look at a macro trend, and you can get a good feeling that people are going to start really freaking out about their purchasing power of their currency, then that's when you can look into gold and gold associated investments as a way to play that macro thing. And I think we're in precisely that kind of a situation right now.
Yeah. And how do you see silver in your portfolio? Does it play a different role?
A similar role. It's a natural option on gold in every monetary based bull market in gold, one that's founded upon worries about purchasing power, about the currency. Silver has always outperformed gold. So, you'd have to be foolish to think that it won't for some reason this time around. And so, yeah, I think it's a natural way to leverage gold. I don't think you should only buy silver. I think you should buy gold and silver for your physical holdings that you're using to hedge against calamity and also hedge against the inevitable depreciation of your purchasing power of your currency. You should have some silver and some gold, and you should have some silver in small denominations, like the junk coins. Love those. But I'm not a big believer in platinum and palladium, I don't think their precious metal status is, there's precious metal and there's monetary metal. I don't think platinum and palladium are monetary metals. And therefore, their association of gold and silver is tenuous.
Yeah, I know. I saw Mike Maloney come out with a tweet today. Is it today or yesterday? I just saw it today, where he said that silver is the 2,000-year-old altcoin.
Yeah. Exactly. I look back to, we talked about the conference being around here for 48 years. I wasn't around that long, thankfully. But the guy that founded everything we do, Jim Blanchard, was really an icon in the gold industry. When I started working for him in 1985 as a junior copywriter, he told me, he said, "Brien, gold bugs are crazy, but silver bugs are effing nuts." And it's rung true ever since. My experience has validated that view ever since.